Hello, hello, this is Jennifer from Jen the Bookworm, and I am coming to you today with an exciting haul, a huge book haul. Now, some of you may know, at least in America and in Canada, there was a huge Audibles sale. And you know that I usually access my reading through Audibles or ebook, and I was watching somebody's video. I can't remember which one of my booktubers I was watching, but they recommended a book, and I'm like, I'm going to put that on my wish list. And I go, and it was on a huge sale. And then I look at my wish list, and everything was on a huge sale. Oh, it was both terrible and wonderful. 65 to 85% off. The terrible was I got 43 books. Even at a steep discount, that was still a hefty amount of money spent. But I made sure to get books that I knew I was going to get one way or the other anyway, and that I would have ended up spending 20 or upwards for. So I saved myself some money, but I did have to spend some money. It's still going on at the time of filming. It's only got one day left. By the time I post this on Friday, I doubt the sale will still be going. So I hope that you had a chance to access the sale. I hope you noticed it if you were somebody who does audiobooks. And I hope that you had as much fun, but maybe not as much fun as I had going through in my wish list, and it was Christmas. So I'm coming today to kind of share with you some of what I got, and probably what's going to be on my TBRs for the next couple of months, because I'm not sure I can afford to buy any more books. So just a quick run through. 43 books. I do not want to be here for an hour and a half. So, and I just watched another YouTuber that I like to watch, Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and he did 60 books in like 20 minutes. And if he can do 60 books in 20 minutes, fingers crossed. So, okay. So one of the first books that I got, these books are kind of in no particular order, but this is what I got. Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. Now this one is cheating. Was not part of the thing. It was actually free to me for the Audible account that I have. I have the Plus catalog, whatever. Anyway, it was free to me, and it's a YA book about a girl who dreams of becoming a pilot. You'll notice on some of these explanations that I don't go very deep into what the book's about, and that's because I tend to not read a lot of the blurb, because I want to know what I want to experience it when I experience it. I don't want it to be spoiled, and sometimes the back of the book blurbs can be spoilery. So anyway, so I got that book, Skyward. I got The Girl from the Well by Ren Chepeko. I hope I pronounced that okay. This one, really, the cover looks to me like the Ring, and I love that horror show. This looks like it's a Japanese horror. It kind of sounds like The Grunge, looks like The Ring. So Japanese revenge spirit who goes after people who hurt children. That sounds interesting to me, so I want to give that one a shot, and I decided to get that. There's a book that everyone's been recommending for a while called Raybearer by Jordan Ifeko. Sorry if I mangled that. This is about a girl, sorry about the barking dogs, windows open. This is about a girl who was sent by her mother, who seems not to be a terribly warm person, to compete to become part of the council for, I guess they cancel the prince or whatnot, but her mom has an ulterior motive, wanting her to become part of the council and then to assassinate the crown prince. So that looks like, or sounds like, it'll be an interesting premise and an interesting book. So I'm looking forward to that. It's also a YA book. The next one, Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. Now, I have been hearing lots about T. Kingfisher and that I need to check out their books. And Nettle and Bone in particular was talked about quite frequently a month or so ago by Elliott Brooks, who I watch. She's phenomenal. And I love the way her enthusiasm for books, and she was very enthusiastic about this book. So it was on sale, and I decided there was a couple of T. Kingfisher books that were on sale, but I decided this one would be the one to start with. And it looks like it's a sister adventure where the younger sister goes to rescue the older sister from an abusive situation. So that sounds interesting. The next one that I got was called King's Dragon, Crown of the Stars series. And this is by Kate Elliott. And looks like a fantasy adventure about Civil War and Inhuman raiders. So we'll see how that works out. Again, very vague because I'm trying not to read too much of the blurb. I got a book called Nana. And this is by Brandon Massey. And this looks like a horror book about a woman who wants to know her biological mother. And the biological mother shows up and looks like mystery and maybe psychological issues ensue. So that looked like fun, sounds like fun, sounds like something I'd be interested in. I'm trying to kind of beef up my horror a little bit and have it not all be John Saul. So that's going to be a great addition to my library. The next one was also inspired by wanting to read more horror. This is The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. I did watch the adaptation for this because Daniel Radcliffe was in it. And it was many years ago that I watched it, and I don't really remember, other than I remember I liked it, but I don't remember much about it. So this is a ghost story, and I think that it will be, it's got good reviews, so I'm going to read this and then rewatch the show, and maybe I'll do a book to screen adaptation video on it in the future. Another one, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Now, there is a Netflix adaptation for this, which I have watched twice. I love the Netflix adaptation. However, I have been warned that the adaptation it's very loosely based on this book. It's not, like, the similarities stop at the title is what I've heard, but I've heard that it's not the same, but that this book is good, that this book it has its own merits and it's good. So I'm interested in reading that and seeing what's different, maybe doing another book to screen adaptation video on it. I know I love the Netflix show, so hopefully I will love the book as well. The next one is The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson. I've heard that this is one of his best works, although it's only a short story. And because it was only a short story, it's only a couple of dollars, so I could not resist picking this one up. At the Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. Now, those of you who have been watching the channel know that I recently picked up Stephen King's fairy tale and liked it. I liked it a lot. I was really, really pleased by my re-entry into Stephen King with that one. But this book had a lot of influence from Lovecraft, and it really made me want to read a Lovecraft book. I mean, I've heard of Lovecraft. I know what it means to be Lovecraftian, but I've never actually read any of his books. And there was somebody on the Grimoire Discord, and I apologize, I didn't look this up, and I forget who it was who came on and said this book was a near perfect book. And I was like, okay, let's do it. I put it on my wish list, and then when the sale came up, I saw that it was not very much money, and so I grabbed it. And I'm hoping to be able to get into that and maybe open up a whole new world of horror that I will love. So one of the series I've been hearing a lot about, there was a book on sale, and it was called The Crown Tower, and that's the Rhyria Chronicles by Michael J. Sullivan. And so I went on there and I got the book, and I just got the first one because I want to try it out. And then later, so I bought these books over a couple of days. I started out with 28 bucks and ended up 43, so I kept going back. But later, I found out that the Rhyria Chronicles are actually maybe chronologically before the other books, which are the Rhyria Revelations. But Rhyria Revelations was publication-wise came out first, so I went ahead and picked up the trilogy that makes up the Revelations and the first book that makes up the Rhyria Chronicles. So the Rhyria Chronicle book is The Crown Tower. The other books are The Theft of Swords, The Rise of the Empire, and Heir of Nevron. And all of these are by Michael J. Sullivan, and I'm excited to get into this series because I've heard really good things about it. So the next book I got maybe kind of seems a little out of place, but it's called The Decoy Princess by Dawn Cook. Now, I didn't know about Dawn Cook, and honestly, if I'd have just judged this book by its cover, I might have said, I don't think so, because it looks like a bodice ripper romance book, which I have read my fair share of and have enjoyed. There are still some of my favorite romance books that are this, but not exactly what I'm looking for right now, not exactly what I read right now. But Dawn Cook is also Kim Harrison. Kim Harrison writes my favorite urban fantasy, the Hollow series, and I've read, 16 of the books in that series, or however many books. I've read all of them but the latest one. And I loved her writing style. I like how she does characters. I liked her main character, kind of kick-ass, no-nonsense, badass female. I like that. And so I didn't know that she wrote under a different name. So I put this on my wish list initially because I saw that it said Kim Harrison. But then I went through and I was reading the reviews, and there was a lot of people who said, judging the cover is a lie. Don't pay attention to the cover. This is a good book. This is, not a romance book so much as it's a badass female character in a fantasy world. So I'm excited. I'm excited to read this. It's about a woman who grew up as a princess, only to find out that she wasn't actually the princess. She's an orphan, and she's the decoy for the real princess. But that doesn't mean that she's not in danger. So that's what the premise of the book seems to be, and I'm excited to read it. And there's others in the series, and we'll see what it's like. One of the stories that I got, there's a couple of like Disney adaptations that I have been wanting to read, mostly because they seem like they might be a little lighter, or they might be just fun to revisit some of these Disney cartoons in a different way, in a literary way. The first one I got was A Whole New World, which this is by Liz Braswell and Disney Press, and this is a retelling of Aladdin, and it looks like it might be a fun read. They come out with a couple of them, kind of twisting the fairy tales a bit. So I thought I'd pick that up and see what it's about. I got more, but they're later on down the list. The next one on my list here is called Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. Now, I read a Karen Slaughter book for the first time. I've only read one. Read it for the first time right the first month, I think July, first month I was doing BookTube. Or I read it right before BookTube, one of those two. I loved it. Now, it was harsh, and it was crass in some places, and it needs a whole page of trigger warnings. But I loved Karen Slaughter, and I admit the reason why I checked out her book to begin with, because I thought her name was cool. So, but I really, really loved that book, and so I picked up a couple of hers in this sale. The first one is Pretty Girls, and this one seems to be about two sisters. Their third sister disappeared 20 years ago, and this is kind of how the trajectory of their lives have gone on, and how they seem to have opposite lives, and so it sounded interesting. And having read the one Karen Slaughter book, I expect that it will be engaging and unputdownable. The next one I got looks like a horror book. It's called No One Gets Out Alive by Adam Neville, and it looked like a haunted house story. It looked like it was an interesting one, and I've heard lots of people talk about it, so I picked that one up. I wanted to give him a shot to see what I thought about him. The next one I am very excited about. It's called Brother by Anya Alborn, and it's a short book, but I have been hearing about Anya Alborn. Actually, I haven't been hearing about her for long, but it was just like all of a sudden everybody that I watch was talking about Anya Alborn. Not everybody, but everyone who reads horror and stuff. They was just like, oh, try this person, she's great. And in particular, Brother seems to be, I think it was her second book that she wrote, but it's the one that she seems to be most known for. And I picked it up, and I think I'm intending to add it to my TBR for October, and I'm excited about it. It's not a very big book, but I'm hoping that it will be cool. Now, the only thing, one little thing, it takes place in the Appalachian Mountains. I have a thing about mountain men. Mountain men horror is particularly scary to me, and I'm not really sure why in particular. But like Wrong Turn or those kind of movies, I'm just, ugh. So we'll see how I fare with this one. Okay, so the next one that I have here is kind of a continuation of the Disney thing that I was doing before. This is the Villains collection. There was actually 3 books in this one collection. And this is by Serena Valentino. And she wrote 3 books that were retelling the Disney story from the villain's point of view. So the first one is Fairest of All, which is a tale of the Wicked Queen. The Beast Within is a beauty, a tale of Beauty's Prince, Beauty and the Beast. And Poor Unfortunate Soul, which was told from the point of view of Ursula. So again, I noticed these books years ago, because they're not new books, but it's just the covers and just the premise. It was kind of cool. I took pictures of them when I go to physical bookstores, because I can't really read physical books very well. I will kind of peruse the stacks, and then I'll take pictures on my phone of the books that I saw that were interesting, and then I'll go look them up, ebook or audiobook. And this was one a long time ago that I had really wanted to try, and since they were on this phenomenal sale, it made it more possible, more attractive for me to pick them up now. So that was 3 books in one in that one. The next one that I picked up is EDGEDANCER by Brandon Sanderson, and this is a novella or short story. I don't think it's a short story, but a novella that takes place. It's like in between the Words of Radiance and Oathbringer in the Stormlight Archive series. I believe this is the one that's about Lift. Now, if you haven't read the series, this is not going to make a whole lot of sense to you, but Lift is a character that it's just a little side character, a little off character that I really liked her. I thought she was really cool, and there was a completely different flavor to her story than the others, and the fact that she called her powers her awesomeness and stuff like that. It was just a very different flavor. I really enjoyed the way that she accessed Stormlight, and I think that a whole story, kind of a more in-depth on her story would be good, particularly because I've already read Oathbringer, and I know she has a fairly much more significant part in Oathbringer than she did before, since I think her story was one of the interlude stories, just tiny little short stories in between the big chunks of his stories, or of his novel. So she was a much bigger part of Oathbringer, and I sort of regret that I didn't read her story in between the two. But I have it now and intend to read it now. So the next book I got, Pieces of Her by Karen Slaughter. As I understand it, this is a Netflix adaptation I have not seen. So this is a story about difficulties between a mom and daughter. It's supposed to be a very good book. It's supposed to be one of her one of her best books, from what I've heard, and I'm interested in reading it and watching the adaptation and seeing what I think of both of them. Now this next one, it's a book that I'm not sure. I got really interested in this series of, when I first started watching BookTube, this was kind of coming out as a big deal. And I thought I'd give it a try. I don't know if I'm going to like this one or not, but I definitely wanted to try it. So this is the Four Horsemen series by Laura Thalassa. I'll put it up on the screen because I know I butchered that one. Sorry. But the first book in the series is Pestilence. So these are dark romances about the Four Horsemen, and each one is about one of the Four Horsemen. This one is about Pestilence, and it comes to Earth, and I think he's here to herald in the end of times, which would make sense, being a Four Horseman and all, and meets a girl who's trying to stop him. They fall in love, that kind of thing. But I hear it's a dark romance, and I hear it's pretty good. Now, if it is good, then I want to pick up the next book. If I don't like it, I didn't want to invest in the whole series. It was one I wanted to try, but I wasn't sure about. Also, when I pick up the next one, if I pick up the next one, if it's one of those books where it's 4 books, but it's basically the same story told 4 times, I'm probably going to DNF it. It's just, I have read books like that before. There was a really good book series. I don't know if I remember what it was called, the Legends series or something, by Sherilyn Kenyon. And I read those books on recommendation of my sister. And the first book, I was like, wow, this is a really good book. The second book, I'm like, wow, this is a really familiar story. And the third book, I'm like, she just did the same story 3 times with a different character. That's wild. Why would you do that? So if that's what this turns out to be, I'll DNF it. If I get through the first book and really enjoyed it, then I'll pick up the second. We'll see how it works. Okay, so the next one I'm really kind of excited about. It is called The Empire of Silence by Christopher RUOCCHIO. And I know that all over the Grimoire Discord, where I hang out quite a bit, this is a author that's talked about. This is a book that's talked about. The Sun Eater series is something that is talked about quite a lot, and I'm interested in trying it out. It's a space opera epic fantasy. I mean, Star Wars-y maybe. I don't know. That's the quintessential space opera I go to. So I am excited to try this out and see if I like it. It was cheap and I picked it up on the sale. The next one I picked up is Unsold by Will Wright. I have heard lots and lots about the Cradle series, and I picked up a Will Wright book a little bit ago, my last haul. It was free to me on my Audible account, and it wasn't part of the Cradle series. It was just another of his, and I've heard a couple of people are like, I haven't read that one, but really like the Cradle series. And just, they're short books, apparently. They're fun reads. Sort of reminds me of the Dresden Files, not in necessarily what the book's about, but the Dresden Files for me these are short reads. These are fun reads. These are action-packed, and they propel you through all the way. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to get through this series as well. The next one I heard from Mike's Book Reviews, and it's called Hellmouth. and it's a novella by Giles Christian. And it said when Mike reviewed it, he sold it. He told me he was talking to me, and he told me that that it was a great read. It was a lot of fun. It definitely had those horror vibes that I'm looking for. And it's a short story, and so it's a good introduction to this author. So I picked it up, and we'll see. Because it was a short story, it was still only a couple bucks, so it was a really good investment, I think. The next one was one I heard from Elliott Brooks, and it is A Deal with the Elf King, which is part of a series called Married to Magic by Elise Kova. And she said that she really liked this book. It's a fantasy romance book, and there's a couple in the series, and she recommended it, and she sold it to me. So I picked it up. I put it on my wish list because of her. I picked it up because it was on a pretty decent sale. It's supposed to be perfect for the tagline says that it's perfect for fans of a Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Now, I'm not a huge Sarah J. Maas fan. I did try a few years before, well before I knew about BookTube, when her assassin Selena Throne of Glass, there you go, Throne of Glass series came out, and I did read like 3 of the books or something like that, but I sort of put down the book halfway through one of them. I don't know, it was just not necessarily my cup of tea. Okay, the next book is Fate of Wrath and Flame by K.A. Tucker. And this is a fantasy book about a woman who is coerced at sword point to do a job. And it sounds like this starts out in New York City and then she goes to a fantasy world or something like that. I didn't read very in depth, but that's what it sounds like. It sounded like a fun read. I can't remember who recommended this one to me, but I picked it up and decided it sounded good enough to pick it up, and I want to give it a try. So this next one is sort of in line with the Disney retellings series or books that I was talking about before. This one, though, it's kind of different. It's called Hooked, and it's by Emily McIntyre. And Hooked it's a retelling, kind of a retelling. It's not really a retelling. It's a reimagined, I don't know, Peter Pan, but it's it's from the point of view of the villain, and it is not a fantasy book. It is a contemporary dark romance book. And I've heard in this one that Captain Hook, the Captain Hook character, I don't know what he goes by in this story, is interested in pursuing Wendy because he's in a rivalry with Wendy's dad, who is Peter Pan, or the Peter Pan character. And I don't know, it sounded interesting. I wanted to pick it up. I did pick it up. I kind of like Peter Pan, and I kind of like Peter Pan retellings. But this book says it's not a retelling. This is not a fantasy book. This is a contemporary dark romance book. So we'll see. I picked up Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This book has been all over BookTube, and it's not FOMO. It's not the reason I picked it up, but it sounds like an interesting book. To me, it kind of sounds a little bit like Stoner from John Williams Wood. I just finished reading that book earlier this month, and that book was not a high impact or not a high stakes book. It was not a high action book. It was a telling of this person's life, and I'm not really sure why I loved it so much, but I did. And this book it's marketed as being kind of a cozy fantasy. It's a low stakes book. It's a book where a retired orc and tiefling open a coffee shop together in a fantasy world. And to people who don't know what coffee is, it sounds like fun. It just sounded like fun. And it sounds like one of those books, like, I don't know why this is so good, but it's good. Which is what made me think of Stoner. It's another book. I don't know why it's good, but it is. But anyway, I picked this up because I thought it sounded like a lot of fun. My partner read part of it, and then had to give up Kindle Unlimited and didn't get to finish it. And so, but he said what he read of it he liked, and everybody on BookTube seems to pick this up and like this one. So I'm excited to read this one as well. The next book I picked up was Dawn Shard by Brandon Sanderson. It's another one of his Stormlight Archive novellas. So I'm interested in anything that Brandon Sanderson writes, to be honest. I don't know if I can be considered a fair and objective person when it comes to him at this point, but especially anything Stormlight Archives, I'm in it. So I picked that one up because it was pretty inexpensive, being a shorter story. To continue my horror collection, I decided to pick up some more John Saul. He is my favorite horror author, and I've read quite a bit of him, but I haven't read everything of his. And he's somebody that I feel like I have never read anything of his that I've not liked. So I kind of feel like it would be a home run no matter what book I picked up. But I wanted to pick up some of his older books, and check them out. So that older books that I haven't yet read. So I picked up two of them. One of them I picked up is Suffer the Children. And this is a horror mystery about children that are disappearing 100 years after a tragedy involving a child. And the next one is called Nathaniel, and it's also weirdly 100 years ago something happened. But it sounds like kind of a boogeyman tale. I don't know which one of those two will be on my TBR for October, but I kind of feel like I would be missing an opportunity if I had a spooky TBR in October and I didn't put my favorite horror person on there. So probably one of those two books will be read next month, but I picked both of those up this time around. I also picked up a book called Camilla, and it's a short story by Joseph Sheridan Lefano. And it is a vampire story. It's a much older vampire story. It was a very short book, but it was sort of billed to me as one of the quintessential vampire stories. So I decided to pick that one up to read that. The next series I recently found out about. And I believe it was Elliott Brooks that I believe it was either Elliott Brooks or it was Murphy Napier. One of those two ladies. I watched both of them, and they're both of them fantastic. But one of them had recommended Shannon McGuire, who wrote a series of books that are like Doorway World books, and sort of like Narnia. So the first book is Every Heart a Doorway, and the second one is Down Among the Sticks and Bones. Now, from what I understand, the odd number books are about kids that went to a doorway world and came back, and it's their experiences about maybe trying to get back to that world or survive in this world after having been in that world, something along those lines. The even number books are supposed to be the tellings of the actual portal worlds, the actual doorway worlds. And so I got one of each because it sounds like very different experiences. I think that these might be companion books and not like, I think all the books in the series can be read in whichever order you want to. That they are companions all set in the same world, but not necessarily a continuation of the story. So I picked up those two books, and I'm excited to read them and see how those are. I might actually read them alongside a reread of Narnia. I really, as much as I want to not reread, I've only actually read a couple of the Narnia books, and I haven't finished the series. So I'd like to do that one day, and maybe these will put me in the mood for it, or be good books to read alongside, or something like that. So I'm looking forward to that. So earlier I talked about picking up Emily McIntyre and Hooked, and there are a couple other books that she wrote that are in the same vein, and so I picked them up as well. I picked up Scarred, and I believe this character is based off of Scar from The Lion King. And I picked up Wretched, and I believe from the blurb, it sounded like this person, this main character, was maybe the Wicked Witch from Wizard of Oz. Again, these books are contemporary dark romance. They are not fantasy. They are not a retelling as much as a reimagining. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it sounded like it would be a fun adventure, and so I decided to pick up all 3 of those books, and I will let you know when I read them. The last books that I picked up, I completely blame on Philip Chase. He was talking about the series, and he seemed to like it, sold me on it, so I decided to pick them up because they were all on pretty good discount. And the series is the Ancestor series, or Book of the Ancestors, and this is by Mark Lawrence. Now, I've been wanting to check out Mark Lawrence for a while. I've heard good things about him, so I've been wanting to check him out anyway. And this series that I picked up the Red Sister, the Gray Sister, and the Holy Sister. So I heard really good things about these books so far, and it sounded like something that I would want to read and want to pick up, so I did, and I'm excited to see how I feel about them. So that is the haul, 43 books. There's still a day left on Audibles, and I am actively staying away from Audibles just to make sure I don't get any more. As much fun as it is to buy the books, as much fun as it is to save the money, I really don't need any more books, and as it is, I'm already going to get looks. So, but it was exciting for me to purchase these books. It's exciting for me to bring you this video to let you know what I got. Being a audiobook reader and a Kindle reader, I feel like I have less opportunities to do book hauls and stuff. I don't go to bookstores and stuff all that often, and where I live, we don't have bookstores, sadly. I have to go quite a distance to get to a Barnes & Noble. It's sad, but it's not something that I can bring to the channel very often, and when I get a book, just pick up a book to fulfill my TBR. I don't really do a whole haul video off that. Seems like it would be silly. So I don't get to bring them to you that often. So I was excited to be able to do that this time. And I hope that you enjoyed the scroll through what I ended up buying. And I can assure you that you're going to see some of these on my future TBRs. And I hope that you'll look forward to seeing my reaction to some of these stories. So thank you for coming and spending this time with me. I always appreciate that. And if you liked what I brought to you today, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to me, why not? I'm fun. Subscribe to me. It's free to do. It helps out my channel. And if I let you down, you can always unsubscribe. But don't unsubscribe. Just join. But I hope that you enjoyed your time here, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.